Starting with number 10, progress in scientific research. Progress in scientific research will not be possible if frequent changes are observed in the rules, characters, or the fundamental properties of the material or systems of the universe. Now, in the Quran, Surah 30 verses 30, you're going to find a passage that says this. So direct your face toward the religion, inclining to truth. Adhere to the fitrah of Allah upon which He has created all people. No change should there be in the creation of Allah. This is the correct religion, but most of the people do not know. So according to this passage, Muslims believe that Allah's will of making the fundamental behaviors of all creations of the universe unchangeable is actually an opening for scientific research, as well as it's necessary for progress in scientific research. For number 9, let's take a look at proven reason. Scientific research is a combination of experimental work as well as intellectual work. And over in the Quran, Surah 17 verses 36, it says, "And do not pursue that of which you have no knowledge. Indeed, the hearing, the sight, and the heart, about all those one will be questioned." So one of the main sources of errors in justification of research is due to the replacement of knowledge by conjecture. And then in the Quran, Surah 53 verses 28, it says this, "And they have thereof no knowledge, they follow not except assumption, and indeed assumption avails not against the truth at all." So according to the Quran, Muslims believe that no research is accepted without any proven reason. For number 8, let's look at the weight of the clouds. This was a pretty cool one. The Quran states that clouds are not light at all, but contrary to a popular belief once upon a time, clouds are actually very heavy. The Quran says, "And it is He who sends the winds as good tidings before His mercy until when they have carried heavy rain clouds. We drive them to a dead land and we send down rain therein and bring forth thereby some of all the fruits. Thus will we bring forth the dead. Perhaps you may be reminded." That's taken from Surah 7 verses 57. So according to recent research, the weight of clouds have been actually calculated. For example, a cumulonimbus cloud, this is known as a thunder cloud. This type of cloud can contain up to 300,000 tons of water. Next up, for number 7, we're going to be looking at the reduction of the Earth's surface. In the Quran, Surah 13 verses 41, it says the following, "Have they not seen that we set upon the land, reducing it from its borders? And Allah decides there is no adjuster of His decisions, and He is swift in account." Also, if you take a look at Surah 21 verses 44, it says this, "Then do they not see that we set upon the land, reducing it from its borders? So it is they who will overcome." So Muslims look at these two verses and believe that they mention that the surface of the earth has been reduced and diminished from its outlying borders. And this is also confirmed by science. They've indicated and approved that there is a constant loss of matter around the earth, although it's very little though. Also, scientists of the Goddard Space Science Institute of Manhattan discovered that the level of water had been increasing as a result of the melting of ice sheets at the poles of the earth. Extraterrestrial life is at number 6. This is something that I've always wondered about as a kid. What lives out there in outer space? It can't be us, like just us humans in this entire universe. So back in the year 1960, Frank Drake performed the first modern SETI experiment, and that is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Now when we look over in the Quran, Surah 42 verses 29, this is what it has to say. "And of His signs is the creation of the heavens and earth, and what He has dispersed throughout them of creatures. And He for gathering them when He wills is competent." So the verse goes on to say that mankind will one day come in contact with those creatures in some way. And there's other verses in the Quran that say that they receive revelations as we do. So it's pretty interesting when you relate that to the world of science. Like, when are we going to find those other creatures that live out there? But let's just get back into it now. Continuing with number 5, embryology. In the Quran, in Surah 23 verses 12 to 14, this is what it has to say. "And certainly did we create man from an extract of clay. Then we placed him as a sperm drop in a firm lodging. Then we made the sperm drop into a clinging clot, and we made the clot into a lump of flesh, and we made from the lump bones, and we covered the bones with flesh. Then we developed him into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. We have to look at the universe expansion. This is a scientific theory that is proven to be true. And in the Quran, it mentions that the universe is expanding, and the following is taken from Surah 51 verses 47 in the Quran. And that says, "And the heaven we constructed with strength, and indeed we are its expanders." Now, as a matter of fact, there's an American astronomer named Edwin Hubble, and he discovered that stars and galaxies, they continuously move away from one another, as well as they move away from Earth. So a universe where everything is continuously moving away from one another, that actually means that this universe is continuously expanding. Number 3 is also a pretty fascinating one, so I want you to listen up real close. There's a lot of information to uncover in number 3. So in the Quran, Surah 39 verses 6, it has a passage that says this: "He created you from one soul, then he made from it its mate, and he produced for you from the grazing livestock 8 mates. He creates you in the womb of your mothers, creation after creation within 3 darknesses. That is Allah your Lord, to him belongs dominion. There is no deity except him, so how are you averted?" So the Quran, it points out something called 3 dark stages of the baby in the womb, and it states that a human being is created in the womb with 3 phases of creation. The order of these phases is as follows. Number 1, there's the darkness of the anterior abdominal wall. And then number 2 is the darkness of the uterine wall. And then number 3 talks about the darkness of the amniochorionic membrane. Also on top of that, in this verse, it indicates that humans come into existence with 3 separate stages which differentiate from one another. And in books of embryology, it states that the life of the uterus also has 3 stages. There's a pre-embryonic stage, then the embryonic stage, and then there is the fetal stage. We're coming down near to the end of this episode, but first we gotta look at number 2, and that is tectonic plates. So we know through science that tectonic plates are produced in the process that's literally called the seafloor spreading. And this happens at mid-ocean ridges where magma bursts out of the earth to produce oceanic crust. And this process also produces volcanoes in the ocean floor, which become seamounts. And we'll take a look at the Quran, Surah 50 verse 7. It says, "And the earth we spread it out and cast therein firmly set mountains and made grow therein something of every beautiful kind." And finally, we made it to number 1, the end of this episode. Yeah, and ironically, we're talking about the end of the universe. There's a passage in the Quran in Surah 21 verses 104 that says, "The day when we will fold the heaven like the folding of a written sheet for the records, as we began the first creation. We will repeat it, that is a promise binding upon us. Indeed, we will do it." So with this description in the Quran, Muslims believe that it actually lines up with the picture of the universe collapsing into a black hole. According to physics, angular momentum would cause the fabric of space to enter into it like rolls of parchment. Then a new universe would emerge from there.